Welcome back, my friends, to another What the Wrestling? A show where I take a look at the various wrestling companies, what they're doing right now, and basically talk about the moments that just make me scratch my head in confusion. Last month was a treasure trove of what am I watching? There certainly were a lot of weird things for the month of July in wrestling. We'll begin with the mildest offender that is tied to the worst offender, and that being NXT. Now, NXT is a brand, some would argue a developmental property of WWE, but since it claims to be a separate animal, we'll treat it as one. All throughout July, they were pushing a wrestler named Dexter Lumis. The important thing to note about Dexter Lumis is he is a quiet, creepy individual whose emotionless stare is just unsettling. Now, whoever plays Dexter Lumis, I don't actually know his real name, pulls this off really well, as I'm certainly unsettled by it. But, however, in a case of they were better not trying as hard, they managed to do something really stupid. During July, they had Roderick Strong practically being haunted and traumatized by Dexter Lumis. That after one or two encounters with the man, Dexter Lumis wound up getting in Roderick Strong's head, and Strong started to see Dexter everywhere. Now, how they could have managed this without it being stupid was Roderick Strong insisting, it's like, there he is, and pointing that direction, then the camera move and there's nobody. While his friends are insisting, no one's there. Instead, what they decided to do was he'd point and go, there he is, and camera would move, and we see Dexter Lumis. He's there, but his friends insist that Strong is seeing things. But then why are we seeing it? I think that's just a situation where the Hollywood writers of WWE prove they are not good writers. It's like the audience doesn't actually have to see Dexter there to get that Strong is going crazy. In fact, it's almost better if have us not see him, because then it makes Strong seem more crazy. Instead, they decided we should have the amazing teleporting Dexter Lumis. Do you want motorcycle ninjas? Because this is how we get motorcycle ninjas. Speaking of things that could have possibly been done better, on to AEW, starting off with the weird feud that started up between Chris Jericho and freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy, who's famous for being as lazy as possible and doing as little as possible in the ring. And the fans kind of like him for that. They actually had him and Chris Jericho, not just for one match, but for several matches, go up against each other, and Chris Jericho, for the most part, being humiliated, even when he'd win. He'd be humiliated by this lackadaisical slacker. This even resulted in Orange Cassidy getting beaten to a pulp, no pun intended, cut open and squeezed, pun intended that time. And Chris Jericho and his inner circle having gallons of orange juice dumped on them. Cassidy was beaten with bags of oranges. You get a theme going on there. And I don't know. I really don't know if I enjoyed it or hated it, but I still think it probably could have been executed better either way. Moving on to Impact. Leading up to their Slammiversary event, Chris Bay had a title opportunity coming up for the X Division Championship. Shenanigans led Chris Bay's friend, Johnny Swinger, to be banned from ringside for that match. But guaranteeing that Chris Bay would win the championship, Johnny Swinger had a plan. He dug through people's locker room attire and stole Suicide's whole costume. The plan, of course, would be dress up like the masked wrestler to appear at Slammiversary. Johnny Swinger, being Johnny Swinger, couldn't help but have the popped collar from of Suicide's jumpsuit, so it looks noticeably different. But it really didn't matter. After the one debut of that plan, it turned out Johnny wound up overhearing that Chris Bay only thought of Johnny Swinger as a tool to be used, and wound up not showing up to help Chris Bay at Slammiversary. And their association was disbanded. Which made this all an exercise in why even bother. One thing that was an intentional stupid mess from Impact Wrestling is a segment that they started only a couple weeks ago, and is no doubt going to continue into August. So I may talk about it more in the next show. And that's the reality TV segment that they premiered, Wrestle House, which, due to supernatural powers, I'm not kidding, a group of Impact wrestlers were now stuck in Tommy Dreamer's summer home. Again, I'm not kidding. As contestants in a reality show for $1 million. Also hosted by Tommy Dreamer. It's his house, you know. That's actually the excuse he gave. It's his house, he's the host. He gets to kick people out. Which is actually both funny and made perfect sense, weirdly enough. So I can forgive them on that one. But this is just going to be an exercise in stupidity. We all know it. But if it's good, silly fun, I don't know, maybe I can forgive it. We'll see. But right now, Wrestle House seems very confusing and worthy of this show. Finally, we reach the big long list that I have for WWE. To get inside the head of Universal Champion Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt said on his Firefly Funhouse that he had been practicing with bringing the dead back to life, and proceeded to demonstrate this by bringing his old gimmick back to life. From that point on, leading up to their match at Extreme Rules, Bray Wyatt was once again the charismatic cult leader. This, of course, led into their Extreme Rules, the horror show, swamp match. Now, you'll hear me talk about the Extreme Rules, the horror show, quite often in this episode. Because they were going out of their way to push the name of the event. They were really pushing the horror show subtitle. The swamp match played far less like a traditional wrestling match and more like a really bad slasher movie. Heck, at the end they even stole the ending to Friday the 13th, with the villainous character coming out of the water to attack someone in a boat. In this case, Braun Strowman pulling him under the water, which then turned red. That's dumb. But we only just started. As also at Extreme Rules, the horror show, we also had a match between Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins. A so-called eye for an eye match, where in order for one to win, they must pluck the eye from the other's head. It's really hard to believe that that would ever be allowed. And they pushed this idea. They pushed it over and over again with the announcers talking about it, the promos about it. They were pushing it and they kept repeating the condition of winning was to remove the other competitor's eye. Then the match actually happened. And of course, no eyes were removed. They did a staged move that made it seem like one of the eyes was poked out by ring steps. And when you make that much of a push, when you make that much of a promise over and over again, expectations are made. Anything less than an eye being removed from its socket would have been a terrible disappointment, and it was. Not that I really wanted any of these people to actually get permanently hurt, but when you make a promise like that, I wanted to see an eye out of its socket. I would have forgive them if they had hokey special effects with a fake eye. Never mind Extreme Rules, the horror show. After the Extreme Rules, the horror show, we did a continuation and the ending of a feud between Jeff Hardy and Sheamus. This was all wrapped around Jeff Hardy's old substance abuse problems, mostly alcohol, and Sheamus being unusually judgmental of that despite being Irish, and decided to basically bully Jeff for about a month. This finished up with a Falls Count Anywhere match inside a Irish pub, with, quote, Jeff Hardy's greatest weakness all around him, unquote. The match was pretty much serviceable for what you'd expect from a hardcore style Falls Count Anywhere kind of match. It would have been perfectly serviceable no matter which one won. But that's not how we were going to do things, is it, WWE? No. Sheamus had Jeff down and decided to put his fedora that he came in with on Jeff Hardy's face. Then go to get a drink. Sheamus takes a little break to get a little drinky poo. When he comes back, he takes the fedora off, and Jeff Hardy is suddenly in his old Willow face paint from Impact. And like some sort of alcohol-free demon, Jeff Hardy just gets up, kicks Sheamus's butt from here to next Tuesday, gets the pin, walks out. So yes, some kind of straight-edge demon, as if we didn't have enough supernatural gimmicks coming around being stupid. And that is the end of the show. That's all I really have to say about that. A alcohol-free demon is about all I can... That's all I can take. That's it for the show. And I hope you like this episode of What the Wrestling. And I hope to have some great news stories for you next month. I don't know if they'll top these, but we'll see. Until then, see ya.